it was a long time ago. There was not even coronavirus back then. I was hoping to come in person, but right now it's kind of hard for me. So I'm going to talk about the fake news, detecting fake news as its source, about media literacy, regulatory compliance, and at the end, I wanted to give you a little bit of bonus, tell you about some more recent research that we are doing related to the coronavirus and disinformation in social media about that topic. So first, what is fake news? Well, I mean, okay, so that's probably one good example of it. It's like some spread of conspiracy theory that, Bill Gates wants to kind of inject us with a microchip as part of his kind of vaccination program. And the whole coronavirus was all about it, and so on and so forth. And there are many conspiracy theories these days. While this one here, all TV fans delighted for another season. You remember that Brexit was kind of postponed a gazillion times. I mean, this is not necessarily something that is, I mean, both are not true, right? But kind of the first one is harmful. The second one is not. So actually, under many definitions of what is fake news, this second one is not a fake news. Under some definitions, it is. But this is really the ones that we are that are dangerous and that we worry about. Okay, so I'm glad that at least at the European Union level, people are talking about disinformation, which is a much more correct term. It's something that is both false and intends to do harm. So if it's just false but doesn't really intend to do harm, if it's something like harmless, I don't know, if I say I have been working on computational linguistics in the last 15 years, and if it actually happens to be 16 or 14, that's not a big deal, right? It's kind of just misinformation. But, if I actually mean something bad, that's disinformation. And there can be malinformation. I can actually use real information, with bad intentions, okay? And people kind of are typically misled to focus on the falseness, on whether something is true or not, where actually what we should worry about is whether something is harmful to a society, to a company, to a person, and so on and so forth. And to me, this is kind of much more important. And this is something that has been realized. So, for example, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, he's talking that he's complaining that social media are weaponizing the web, right? So that they are actually turning it into a political weapon, into something. Actually, what is a weapon? A weapon is something that can do harm. And this about it. It's not necessarily about something being false, because the best propaganda is something that tells the truth, only the truth, but not the whole truth. I can also kind of cherry pick the facts, or I can kind of present actual information, but really put some emotional things about it, and so on and so forth. So why should we fight the fake news? Well, I mean, initially, the reason there has been like false information for a long time. I mean, there have been like all these tabloids. There has been, I mean, people are not telling always the truth. There this false information in the time of the pharaohs and the pyramids and so on and so forth. But things really got different when because of social media and which allowed micro-targeting. They actually allowed somebody to generate news that is specifically targeting a specific kind of people. So they can create a news that is designed for you to press on a specific button on you. With some psychological profiling, you can you can actually tell, politicians can tell different things to different people, and they can kind of bombard them with specific messages. So, for example, if I'm in this village, maybe they know, oh, this is a guy, this is a male, and he's like this age, and whatever, and lives in this place. So probably the biggest problem is, I don't know, gun control, or probably the biggest problem is that they are causing the mine, or probably the biggest problem is immigration or unemployment. And we are going to bombard him with news about that. And this was in 2016. This is why we worry about it. But this was the political aspect. And here's another example of the political aspect. So kind of fake news have been weaponized. The news has been weaponized according to Brexit, actually even before the US elections. And another thing that happens is people get literally killed. So for example, in India, there are all these fake claims in social media, typically in Instagram over there, in WhatsApp. And so they are putting something false, and then people go and in many cases they actually kill people. And this kind of weaponized information can have much more severe consequences. So an official report by the United Nations blames the fake news on a genocide against the Rohingya. This is kind of mass scale. So things can be quite serious. And there are also financial aspects. So, for example, this was before we had talking about fake news. This was back in 2013. We were talking about fake news since 2016. Syrian hackers actually hacked the Twitter account of the Associated Press and put there, two explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured. And this has caused $136 billion losses on the stock exchange. So kind of you can weaponize the information for financial gains as well. And of course, then comes next comes the medical aspect. So, for example, this information from last year around this time, UNICEF has found 300% spike in the global measles outbreak, and actually 4 European countries, it was again information from a year ago, were no longer measles free. Disease that was kind of eradicated, was back. And it was back in countries like UK, Greece, Czech Republic, and Albania. Several of them, quite close to Bulgaria. And of course, then along came the coronavirus. And so over there, both the medical and the political mixed into one global infodemic. So kind of we are talking now about the pandemic, but we are also talking about the first global infodemic, where you have panic, you have racism, you have other things. I'm going to talk more about this. If you look in the top 5 priorities of the World Health Organization, you're going to find there that fighting the infodemic is number 2 in the top 5 priorities of the World Health Organization. So this has caused a lot of recent interest in fighting disinformation, especially in social media, but in mainstream media as well, and all kinds of websites. So one thing that people have been doing for a long time, and I think this is very valuable and very, very needed, is fact-checking. So fact-checking as a solution, possible solution to disinformation. And there are many, many claims that have been fact-checked. So, for example, things about hand sanitizer, things about, whether you can cure coronavirus with some dryer, or whether garlic cures it, or drinking bleach cures it, or whether 5G causes coronavirus, and so on and so forth, right? Now, and they have all fact-checking organizations started initiatives, let's say about COVID-19. For example, factcheck.org, they have a page where you can have, some claims that they have checked, and this is something about Snoops. It's another major fact-checking initiative where they have a collection of memes and disinformation related to coronavirus. Full Fact, which is the leading fact-checking organization in the UK and one of the most respected in Europe, has something. But the question is, how much has been fact-checked at the end? Okay, and there's this initiative, Claims KG, where they're using the Google claim review schema to build a knowledge graph out of claims review, and you see how many claims have been fact-checked by Snoops in total. I'm not talking about COVID-19. I'm talking in total, kind of in the several years of existence. Well, 12,000, right? Pretty fast, 16,000, and then the others rarely have even 1,000. No, so the total is 33,000. Okay, probably those guys have not crawled everything, but you get the idea, right? Those are several of the major fact-checking organizations, and there are obviously many, many more claims than that. So basically, people have been saying, okay, let's do automatic fact-checking. So here's, for example, a system by a former colleague of ours who is doing. I mean, there are several kind of tools like this where you can put a claim and you can get something, whether this is likely true or likely false. So there was this paper that shows that false information on Twitter travels 6 times faster than true information, And this was kind of something that was published in Science, and it was very kind of highly influential paper because they really kind of checked every single about 60,000 claims and have checked how they spread. But another paper that is kind of less famous, but kind of I think it's actually more important, shows that 50% of the lifetime spread of some very viral fake news on Twitter happens in the first 10 minutes, which means that you don't really have much time to react. Okay, so so the alternative is to go after the source, to actually look at the source. Just a second, sorry. Hello. Okay, so it's better to detect, I mean, and then basically if you focus on the source, I like to say that you can detect the fake news before it was even written, because you can be prepared. You can actually, the moment when somebody puts something, probably put a link to an article, and we can actually go and we can, chances are that we know in advance whether we can trust the website where this article is hosted. So another question is, can we win the war on fake news? Okay, so I kind of ask many questions. So I mean, that's something that is requires a lot of things. So it actually requires the cooperation of technology companies, of governments, international organizations, journalists, academia, and so on and so forth. But there has been an encouraging sign. So again, about a year ago, it was everywhere in the news that Finland is winning the war on fake news. And so how are they doing it? Through education. Okay, so basically through media literacy at all levels, primarily in the schools, but also, for all levels of the society, for all ages. And obviously, media literacy has something to do with resilience to fake news, but there's this study that is kind of, Finland has one of the best education systems, and they have the highest media literacy. And unfortunately, if you here at the Balkans, we don't, kind of the degree of media literacy is not so high, unfortunately. So my favorite way to fight disinformation propaganda is through kind of making people aware about it. And there's nothing new under the sun. This is something that Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda of the Third Reich, was saying, that propaganda becomes ineffective the moment we are aware of it. So the idea is we want to make people aware of that they are being manipulated. And then it's not going to work. So earlier this year, in February, a little bit before the lockdowns happened, I was invited to be a speaker at a conference in India, and I visited the tomb of Indira Gandhi, of Mahatma Gandhi, and I discovered this very curious thing. Don't listen to rumor, but if you do, don't believe it. So if everybody follows this advice, you're not going to have this problem in social media. So we have this Tambi project, which is inspired by similar kind of thinking, that we want to limit the effect of fake news propaganda and media bias by making users aware of what they're reading. And so there are like three key things that distinguish this from other work. So one is, so as you read the news, we signal to you what you're reading. We are building media profiles. We are kind of profiling entire websites so that as you're reading a news, we can tell you, oh, it's coming from a source that is known to be reliable or unreliable, or to have this specific bias, and so on and so forth. And then we have this kind of fine-grained propaganda analysis, which is really, really cool. And I hope to be able to show you around the end. So, okay, let's look now into media bias and factuality of reporting. So if you read I mean, you can read something like this: antibody tests support what's been obvious. COVID-19 is much more lethal than the flu. Or you can find something: we could be vastly overestimating flu and his COVID-19 and his why. So actually, one of them is kind of making us aware that things are serious, and the other one is kind of trying to downplay it. Now, it might be useful for you to get some background information. I mean, actually, both of those can be true, right? Because especially initially, when we don't know about the virus enough, both of those claims can be simultaneously true, right? It's not about true or false, but we can actually give you also an idea what is about the bias of those in the media where those are published. So basically, we're interested in two things simultaneously. One is, can you trust the source of information? And second, what is its bias in general or with respect to specific topics? And what we do is, we are analyzing entire news outlets, and we are looking into different things. We are looking primarily into what they publish, but we also look into how people react to what is being published in Twitter, in social media, basically in Twitter. I mean, what kind of users looking into their profiles, are they conservative, liberal, and so on, share this information in Facebook. We're also looking into the YouTube channels of those media, so that we look into not only what is being said, but how it is being said. So we are analyzing the speech signal. Is there a lot of appeal to emotions and stuff like that? We are also looking into Wikipedia, what is written about this news outlet, and also web traffic, structure of the URL, and things like that. Okay, so you can kind of see whether it has Wikipedia pages and how it's described, and this is something that we can analyze automatically. If we discover something conservative, this means that there is a certain bias on certain topics, and we can detect that. Or we can actually look into the Twitter account of the target medium. So, for example, here's one news outlet, and this is its Twitter account. And you see how they self-describe. First of all, is their Twitter account? Is it verified? And so on and so forth. We can look into these things. Is it old? How many followers it has? But also how they self-describe. See, an Army combat veteran, NCO, Crusader, Republican, MAGA, Make America First, and so on. Those kind of tells you that this account has a right bias. Again, remember, you are not looking only into factuality, we are also looking into bias. And then, the structure of the URL. So, for example, you see abcnews.com.co. That's kind of suspicious. That's probably kind of something that, pretends to be something that it's not, or the Angry Patriot Movement, or Alternative, or 100% Fed Up. So those are not, if you can chop it into meaningful words, that's kind of, a signal that this is probably not a good website. And you can also kind of exploit the web traffic. We are also looking, as I said, into YouTube channels and the analyzing the
You're back to mute.
Okay, it crashed on me. I don't know what happened. I mean, just WebEx crashed. Okay. Do you guys hear me now?
Now we do.
Now you do? Okay. Wow, that's terrible. Okay. Let me share. sharing. Okay. Okay, so we are analyzing Twitter, and we are detecting the bias in social media of specific news outlets. Basically, we're looking into the context, let's say, of a debate about, let's say, gun control or immigration or climate change or COVID-19, whether a left or a right-leaning users are going to share a link to an article from the target news outlet. And we are accumulating this information and we're estimating what is the bias of that news outlet. And another way to look into those sorts of information is you can basically say that when you are analyzing a news medium, we are looking into what it has written. So basically, the articles it has published, its own Twitter profile, its YouTube videos, and so on. Who reads it? It's actually its audience, the biography of the followers, and the demographics of the Facebook users, the metadata in YouTube, and also what is written about the news outlet. So let's kind of its Wikipedia page content. And so we have this data set from Media Bias Fact Check. Media Bias Fact Check is a website that profiles media with respect to their bias, left, center, right, and in terms of their factuality of reporting from very low to very high. And we put those in a 3-point scale, like left, center, right, and in factuality in terms of low, mixed, and high. Here you see, what coverage we have of the different sources. So everything has articles, some have Wikipedia, some have Twitter accounts, some have Facebook, some have YouTube, and so on and so forth. And then we are making a prediction. This is something that we are going to present at ACL, next month. So we are making a prediction. We are modeling things about the articles, and we can predict with 81% F1 measure, the political ideology. It's kind of based on who is reading it. It's based on the users. It's kind of less useful. And based on what is written about it, that's basically Wikipedia. It's also kind of not so useful. But when you put everything together, you get into, quite good results. And see very similar story for factuality of reporting. And again, you see that, you go from a majority voting baseline of 22 to, something much higher. So there's a connection between factuality of reporting and bias. So, and this is something that we exploit. So for example, there's an observation that the more central you are, the less biased you are. So the kind of the extreme right news outlets are here. They're kind of very far to the right and very low on factuality, and the same for extreme left. And kind of those that are more in the center are kind of more trustworthy. And you see here Reuters, Associated Press, Bloomberg, and so on and so forth. And so this means that we might need to model factuality and bias jointly, and this is what we do. And it actually helps. So we are modeling factuality and bias and centrality and hyperpartisanship jointly, and also the bias in different scales, 7-point, 5-point, 3-point. If you do multitask learning, this is kind of mean absolute error. You see that the error goes down. And it's something that we have done last year. Now, another thing that is related to the problem is propaganda. So now see the definition of propaganda. Expression deliberately designed to what is it? I don't see. Oh yeah, to influence the opinions, actions of other individuals or groups with reference to predetermined ends. Now, if you think about it, for disinformation, we had two key components. One was that something is not true, and the second that it actually means harm. So for propaganda, we also have two components. One is that you try to put and second, that you do it on purpose. And now, pay attention. The interesting thing is that propaganda is not true, it's not false. That's not part of the definition. It is not good, it's not bad. Again, it's not part of the definition. So propaganda can be actually true, and propaganda can be actually false. It's just that, there are techniques, maybe they kind of try to, I don't know, maybe make you angry or happy about some fact, right? Or they want to make you act in a certain way. And propaganda is done through different techniques. And so, for example, one technique is name calling, right? Here we have one example of this. You're calling somebody some names, and this is how you're, influencing people emotionally. But so some kind of the techniques are appealing to emotions. Other kinds of techniques for propaganda are actually logical fallacies. There's something in the logic of the argument that doesn't make sense. So, for example, bandwagon is one of these. 57%, say that, they would vote for Clinton for president. Okay, this kind of the message is we're on the winning side of history. Come join us, no? Okay, maybe makes sense at some kind of psychological level, but from a logic point of view, the majority can be right or the minority can be right. Just because most people believe in something doesn't mean it's true. Typically it is, but not always. So I can give you an example. The example is this. There was a recent study that last year that has shown that most of the people in Russia don't believe that Americans wanted in the moon. Okay, actually, when it happened, there was no doubt about it in the Soviet Union. They actually invited Armstrong to visit Moscow, and he did. And he gave interviews, and so on and so forth. And there was absolutely no doubt that Americans did it. Okay, but today most Russians believe that it's not true. Okay, so just because this is kind of bandwagon, right? Okay, most people believe in this, it has to be true. And here's another one, appeal to fear. Again, I told you that propaganda doesn't have to be bad, it can be good. So for example, here, Greta Thunberg is trying to scare us so that we do something, good for the planet. Or the same way a government can try to scare you so that you vaccinate your children about some very bad disease. So, and yeah, here's some list of propaganda techniques. So what we did is we looked into different kinds of fine-grained propaganda techniques. We annotated text, 350,000 words. Okay, you should hear me now. Do you? I have to restart.
We do.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I have to restart each time it stops. So, okay. When I restart it, it starts working again. I don't know what the problem is. Okay, so here you see the techniques that we have been annotating. And this is the automatic analysis of our system. And so you see that there are kind of about 18 techniques and counting from 0. So half of them are some kind of appeal to emotions, and the other half are some kind of logical fallacies. And you see this kind of the output of the system. So we will pursue any aggressor, that's appeal to fear. Full destruction, that's worded language, which is kind of emotional manipulation. And so on and so forth. And here you have the Congress will do our job to uphold the Constitution, defend our national security, and defend the American people. So this is flag waving, which is kind of appeal to patriotism. Brutality and bloodshed, this is appeal to emotions, this kind of loaded language. Latest outrageous attempt, the same thing. So this is just an automatic output from our system. So this kind of what kind of analysis we can do of a text. And I can show you this in action in a bit. And here's some more. So the other thing another thing that we have promised to you is the AI for regulatory practice. So last year we participated in together with Al Jazeera, Associated Press, RTR1, and some other partners into namely Tech Mahindra, Vinova, and Meta Liquid, into a program to build things to help media to self-monitor their content and look for potential problems. So, for example, we have something where you can upload an article and upload a video, and it tells you, oh, here there's a claim that has been previously fact-checked, and we know it's true, or we know it's basically kind of we signal this, and then humans can have a look into it. And another thing is kind of to show the bias, because media they need to know whether they are biased, left, center, right. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay. Maybe especially for central for certain government-run media, kind of public media, like, I don't know, BBC or RT in Ireland, it can be a legal requirement, especially at election time, to give equal representation. And here's something else. It's like about graphic content, where we upload a video, and it tells you that, okay. Okay. So, and we won an award about this system. So the things that I have shown you before, we have them as APIs. So we have exposed them as APIs. Okay, so you guys can hear me. And we also have a plugin in a browser where you can actually go and see those profiles. And I can demonstrate in a minute. Before I do, this is the team. So we have people from doing language technologies, people doing social computing. We have people from, Northwestern journalism. We have collaborators with MIT. We have joint postdocs. We've been working with a lot of students from Sofia University in the, and professors there. And we have been collaborating actively with MIT, with Al Jazeera, RT, Associated Press, more recently with United Nations, Facebook, and so on and so forth. And obviously with Sofia University and so on. I wanted to show you a demo quickly, and let me see. I'll stop sharing this, and just very quickly, I want to see if this is going to work. Okay. So, okay, let's see. So, wait. Okay. So this is, okay, so this is kind of the profile that we have for BBC, for example. So we have analyzed some 50,000 articles. I led the meeting. I'm still here. Okay. And we have, okay, I'm okay, good. Okay, so yeah, we have analyzed some 50,000 articles, and we found that, the vast majority of them are very unlikely to be propaganda, right? And then we also detect the general frame of reporting. every single thing, I don't know, let's say Brexit, let's say the COVID-19 has different aspects. Maybe it has a political aspect, maybe it has an economic aspect, maybe it has a health aspect, legal aspect, and so on and so forth. And we are analyzing from how the media frame their stories. And this is the factuality of reporting that actually looks into everything that we have, that I have told you about, information from social media, from Wikipedia, from the medium itself, and so on and so forth, and then the leading political ideology. So, and you can do this kind of, you see the BBC is quite central, probably a little bit to the left. And you can see this also on a 7-point scale, 3-point scale. Those are things that we predict. And then this is its audience bias. This is something that we extract from Facebook through their actually advertisement API. This is something, information that they're exposing to their advertisers. And actually, if you know how to query, you can get it. You see that there's some left bias. And then there's this kind of the bias of BBC with respect to some topics. And you see kind of a little bit to the left. And this is kind of the bias of the Twitter users, of the Twitter users when they discuss that are following, that are reading BBC, their bias. So kind of you see that there's a liberal bias on Twitter. And then we have like stance with respect to specific topics and so on and so forth. And we built this for many, many different media. You can go, you can actually go here and you can search. Another thing that we have is okay, let's see. This went to sleep. Oh, it can be this. Okay, so this is. So we have a profile page where you show you on a map who is reporting on COVID-19 and where propaganda comes from, what are the top propagandistic countries and media in absolute and in relative numbers. Then you kind of see how propagandistic the content is about this topic and what is the frame of reporting. And interestingly, before it was really about health, but now kind of you see a lot of much more over time, a lot more economic and some political aspects coming out. And finally, this is the fine-grained propaganda detection. It's really good. So, okay, before that, let me kind of show you. So if I go to, I don't know, let's say I go to CNN, and as I'm reading it, let's see. Okay, should do this, done B. Okay. Maybe I need to restart because I have kind of stopped. Anyway, we have here Chrome extension. Okay, I'm not going to show it now because I have disabled all plugins before we started. So I need to stop that. But let me show you the PERTA system, which is for the tool for analysis of propaganda techniques. What you can do is we have actually analyzed a lot of articles with these fine-grained techniques, and you can go there and you can explore them. So, for example, here it's about COVID-19, and you see the general kind of techniques that are there. Obviously, the main propaganda techniques is worded language overall, and then it's appeal to fear and prejudices. And then it's name calling, and then it's flag waving, things like patriotism, some doubt, some exaggeration, minimization, some slogans, causal oversimplification, repetitions, thought termination cliches, appeal to authority, and everything else is very small. And what you can do is you can look into how those differ. So, for example, here's a left medium. Here you see only those for CNN, right? And this is the general one. Or you can see, I don't know, let's say only those for Fox News versus, the general one. So you see that, I don't know, let's say for Fox News, you see that there's much more slogans and flag waving, which is appeal to patriotism, and much less appeal to fear, okay? So it's kind of a right-leaning medium, And you can see that they are not really, they're kind of, playing it down. So he's like minimization, probably, some doubt, some, flag waving, make America great again, and so on, and some slogans, right? But not really fear. While it's kind of the general reporting and kind of, see here, this is CNN, right? CNN is much more fear. And slogans are, here. So, you see that there's difference in the reporting. You can go how, you can here click and unclick. You can see how, for example, how left media report about it, or how center media report about it, and so on and so forth. And you can also explore different time periods. You can also click on a specific news outlet, and you can see the propaganda techniques in the article. And pay attention that those are not necessarily just one word or one phrase. They can be quite long. So, for example, here is the world could face a shortage of antibiotics if the pharmaceutical industry, blah, 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 cannot be resolved. So this is appeal to fear, no? And it's coming from Reuters. Okay, so, obviously this is the most propagandistic one in Reuters, but I don't know. Here's another one. Let's see. So, yeah, rumor mongering, this kind of worded language. Let's see this one. Okay, poses. Okay, the coronavirus outbreak poses a very grave threat to the rest of the world. This is appeal to fear, right? Very grave threat. Or I don't know, other things. So I can go actually to some news outlet. I don't know. I can go to maybe I can go to, and I can get any news article. Okay, and I can actually go back in the Perta system. I can submit my own article. I can kind of put here the text. I can copy the text from the URL, and it gives me everything here. And then I can submit it, and I can do an analysis, right? So kind of you can do this in your own text. And as I said, you can also do this in the API. So we have APIs where you have APIs where you can actually see, this functionality that I was talking about. And okay, so here came the analysis. You say legislation down people's throats. Okay, that's worded language. Extremely hypocritical. That's worded language. The cop, the chopped Eric. That's name calling. Okay, so you get the idea. And the final thing that I wanted to show you, let me kind of stop sharing Chrome, and then I stop. It's something new. Okay, so I kind of have just a little bit and I'm finishing. Okay, so we have been working on annotation schema and also systems for fighting the COVID-19 infodemic by modeling the perspective simultaneously of journalists, fact checkers, social media platforms, policymakers, and the society as a whole. And the reason is this actually goes beyond just whether something is true or not. And we believe that fighting the pandemic, the disinformation, and actually the infodemic requires all this. And I'll show you some examples, right? So, okay, obviously there are jokes, right? If the coronavirus enters Spain, it would be through the Barcelona defense site, okay? Because, Barcelona is not good in defense or something like that. That's a joke. But there are also rumors. This rumor simultaneously in English and in Arabic. Today there are going to be those military helicopters that will spray pesticides against the corona and so on and so forth. And there are conspiracies, the cure, Bill Gates, he's going to have his mandatory vaccine, and this is exactly when he's going to kill us for real, stuff like that. Then this promotion of fake cures, like, oh, both garlic water, is going actually to cure it, this is great news, and so on and so forth. And those are things that you might want to whack, because, again, if you think about it, maybe the Ministry of Health, of Public Health, who wants to react on some of health. I just have a very, very little left. Okay. So what we have here is, So the next thing is, there are tweets that are spreading panic, like, oh, the zombie apocalypse, oh, Americans are buying guns. That's again something that somebody might want to address, and you can be blaming the authorities for doing something or for not doing something, and that's something that they might want to listen to understand what are people's concerns. There can be also things that are promoting advice or giving recommendation about what to do. And so, for example, here, we made a recommendation to states, to do this or that. Or there can be others, like discussing action taken maybe in other countries. So, for example, he is, okay, Germany is going gradually back to normality. What they do is 1 million tests per week, okay? And so, that's also something that you might want to detect and to collect. Oh, this is what others are doing. There is also sometimes call for action. Okay, close the barber shops and the salons, okay? Because this is where things are happening. You might want this. There can be a discussion of possible cure, like chloroquine, phosphate, and so on. Did something happen? No? Okay. I'm imagining things. Or they can be like asking a question. So there can be people asking a question. Is the virus going to totally disappear in the summer? Share. Okay. So we model this into different questions, like, does the tweet contain a verifiable factual claim? Is it false? Is it of interest to the general public? Is it harmful? And is it worth checking? Okay. And then, whether it's harmful to the society and so on. We have collected some English tweets about this, some Arabic tweets, and we have something in archive that you can go and you can learn more about it. And we are, asking people that may have some time, to help us annotate more data. We also have some cool experiments that are quite promising on this data set. And here, this is the annotation interface. It's very easy. And I'll stop here. Yeah, I stop here. You guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Preslav.